Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And Bonsai says hello as well. There you go, you got a Bonsai special in the background. I want you all to meet Lindi, who's a very, very special lady, and she does some remarkable work with people. But let's find out a bit about Lindi's life and background. And Lindi, over to you. Tell us a bit about your life. Now, I know that you live in the northern part of South Africa, but tell us a little bit about yourself growing up. And
Okay, hello Scott, and hello to all your viewers. I just have to say that I love the name of your channels because loving life is what my whole life is about. So thank you for that. You mentioned in the teaser that I had a very hard life. And before I tell you anything about my background, I really want to say that, yes, depends on where you look from. And yes, maybe it was very hard. And at the same time, it was a privilege and an absolute blessing, because I would not be sitting here today had I not gone through those experiences. So to me, there is no such thing as a coincidence, and every experience and everything we have is an opportunity to grow us and to mold us and to shape us into that which we want to or need to become. So yes, it might have been tough, but that's relative. There are so many people that have gone through so much more than I have as a child, and some people just don't go through those kind of experiences. Ultimately, actually, we all end up somehow, and goodness knows how this works, and why this is so, but we all grow up thinking that we're not enough and that we're not worthy and that we're not deserving. And so we walk around as people who are not whole. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. So
okay, let's get back to you as a child, because you like me are part of the, I guess we could say, the older generation, although you look like about 30. Now, you were obviously around pre-1994 in the days of apartheid and things like that. I always ask my real people guests this question, and I need to ask this question of you too. How have you found life in South Africa has changed since 1994, personally?
That's a big question. How has life changed?
Mm-hmm.
It's changed in a lot of ways, Scott. For me personally, my experience was that we grew up not knowing the truth, not knowing what was actually happening,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing how governments operate, not knowing what happens behind the scenes, fighting wars that we didn't really know why we were fighting them, and we thought we were fighting them for other reasons than what we really were. Um, but life was good, and I noticed in later years, but there was such a dichotomy in the way I was raised, because we were raised very conservatively, and yet at the same time, my mother, for instance, would teach her worker to drive and really cared for them absolutely and deeply, and made sure that they were always all right. So there was that dichotomy. Looking back, I wouldn't want to go back to those times, because really we were under some kind of an illusion of what was really happening. And I guess just as we are today, how things have deteriorated in South Africa since 1994 is absolutely horrific and very, very sad. And maybe it was predictable, because I don't think the gap in education for the underprivileged can be met if there's no understanding of what it'll take. And well, frankly, maybe that's part of what I do, because if we are not emotionally intelligent, how on earth can we run a country? And we just seem to always end up all across the world, and so the same in South Africa, with
Yeah.
these leaders that are power hungry, that need recognition, maybe that are greedy, that have nothing to do with caring for people, with
Mm.
actually uplifting, with being servants unto a nation. And there's just no wisdom there. So that was true pre-apartheid, before '94, and it is true today. So
Yeah.
we need a whole different mindset and actually upbringing of our children and everybody's children if we want to change this world. And that's how I see it. Does that answer
Yeah.
your question?
It does, and there's a very interesting comment that Nelson Mandela made in a debate with de Klerk during the interim government. I actually had it in a video just a couple of days ago. And Mandela said, when we get into power, we're not going to be these fat cats who take all the money. And I think that that's been proven to be completely wrong.
Yes, once we start digging um, for information and truth,
Mm.
there's a whole different picture that's emerging, and
Yeah,
it's not just true for South Africa; it's true for for the entire world.
yeah,
Um, and for the most part, those in power are simply just puppets.
mm.
They are just puppets, and the puppet masters are hidden, and and you will not find the information about these things in mainstream media, or as I call it, lamestream media.
Fake media.
Um, so sadly, the most people don't actually get the information of what is the truth.
Yeah,
But most people in government and the leaders actually report to someone outside of the country.
like
You
George
know, that's
Soros.
that's the truth. Well, yeah. There's a fantastic book. I don't know if anybody follows QAnon, but they recommended the book. One of the books that they recommended was called "The Last Waltz of the Tyrants." Now that explains the whole thing.
Who wrote that
So
book?
it's Rumthar,
Ron?
but if you just Google or go to Amazon or Loot or
Okay,
one of these, you hopefully will find the book "The
okay.
Last Waltz of the Tyrants," and it is eye-opening of
Yeah,
what's really truthfully happening behind the scenes.
yeah.
But you see, we first got to wake up and understand that the whole mainstream media, that everything basically is controlled, whether it
Mm,
be oil, whether it be pharmaceutical, or
mm.
the Monsanto or Monsatan, as I
Yeah.
call it, all these things. It's all tied together and it all works
Yeah.
together.
Now,
Even if you look at politics. All
yeah.
right, now continue, because
Now,
I'll just go on forever.
now the other end of the scale is during your life journey, you spent a couple of months with the San people, and that was quite a revelation for you when you were younger. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, it was. And because I grew up with so much fear and insecurity, and I didn't feel that I fitted in anywhere.
Mm.
At one point, I lived in Johannesburg, and I just did some kind of job, and I just couldn't stand it. And life had just no meaning to me.
Yeah.
And I literally ran away. And I ran right into the Sun people, and it's the David Kruiper group that has they've gotten quite a lot of media coverage
Hmm.
after that. Um, but yes, it did open up so much for me and I got such a deep respect for culture.
Hmm.
And they live in such harmony
Hmm.
with nature, and it's just beautiful. They are so in touch, and they understand that we are multidimensional beings, that
Hmm.
we are not just our bodies, that intuition and gut feeling and psychics, call it what you will, but these things that are unseen
Hmm.
is part of who we are.
Hmm.
um, and they use it. I remember, for instance, um, we took who was it? I think it was David himself, David Kruiper, and we were in the middle of the desert in the Namib, and we were busy shooting a film, and we took David, and it was nighttime, and we just stood there, and he stood with his arms stretched out, and we spun him, and we said, David, now spin around and spin it this way and spin that way, and then we'll keep your eyes closed, and then point to north and south. And he did just that, and he was 100% accurate.
Wow.
Just, it's how do the birds migrate? How do animals migrate? These
Yeah.
things.
There's so many unknowns, aren't there?
Yes, and we talk about how can I put this? Let me rather share the story of when the Sun people dance around the fire. And they literally go into a trance. And, well, that's what we are now finally learning with meditation or deep prayer or focus or whatever it is that we do. But the Sun have been doing this for eons. And they would dance themselves in a trance around that fire until they are at such a level that Damarop, for instance, who was one of the guys, would roll through the fire. And the next day he wouldn't have a blister. There would be no sign that he was rolling through the fire.
Well, that's like the Fijians who do fire walking.
It's exactly like that, and that's now caught on in the Western world. Oh, mind over matter, mind as matter, whatever you think is what you create, and that is your reality. And these indigenous folks have known it for eons, forever.
Yeah.
And that's what I fell in love with, just being so in touch with nature and themselves and knowing who they are.
Well, it's a very different world to the world that we live in, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are so shut off from, first of all, nature, and nature is our biggest teacher. If we have a question, we just need to go out and sit in nature and just become still.
Yeah.
And we'll see the answers in the trees and the grasses and the birds and the animals. It's all over. It's written all over in nature. And we're so cut off from that. And we almost like permanently live in this fight and flight mode where the stress hormones just pump through our bodies all the time. And if we look at nature, for instance, the antelope would graze and then there would be danger of a predator and they would jump up and run. Their bodies would be filled with adrenaline and cortisol and all the stress hormones to actually get them going. And 5 minutes later, everything is fine. Maybe a deer is caught or whatever, and they graze as if nothing has happened.
Yeah.
But you see, we don't do that. Yeah. We are continuously, the moment we open our eyes in the morning, we go into stress mode, and it's this that has to be done, and that needs to happen, and this and that and the other, and it's never enough. And we just keep those stress hormones at the highest level.
Yeah.
And we wonder why so many diseases have become epidemics.
You know what I always think back on? And it's funny because at the time I didn't realize how special that time was, and it's all part of our makeup, as you say. It's our memories. And I had a farm in the Drakensberg for a couple of years, and it was 50 acres, and I used to just walk over this farm, and I loved it. The views of Champagne Castle were amazing, and it was just so beautiful and relaxing and so on. But I was kind of just living in the moment, and I really wasn't appreciating how special that was. But now when I look back at that time of my life, I just always think back on those moments just walking across that farm. And there are moments like that that you really don't appreciate at the time.
Well, if you were in the now, that's exactly where we want to be. So I don't think it's that you didn't appreciate it. Maybe you didn't know what your life was going to look after that. And yes, in some sense, we do take things for granted when we are young.
Yeah, we do take things for granted.
When we don't have it anymore, then we think back of it and how fantastic it was. But we tend to whitewash things as well.
Yeah.
But the whole thing to be in the now, because most of us live either in the past or we live in the future. We're not in the present moment.
Mm.
And the present is a gift. I mean, that's why it's called the present.
Mm.
And so we miss out on so, so, so much in life.
Right. Now, talking about being in the now, you are a life coach, and that can mean many things. Would you like to just sort of broaden that up and tell us what sort of things you help people with, and what your areas of expertise are?
Yes, absolutely. There are life coaches and there are life coaches. And unfortunately, there isn't necessarily a great standard. Yes, there's the International Coaching Federation and so forth. And and there are so many views actually on coaching. If you listen to Tony Robbins, he says,
Hmm.
well, I will heal everything and anything that a psychologist and a psychiatrist can't heal. And then you have the other school of thought that says, well, we are not therapists and we don't really delve into the past. I think ultimately, if a person is really interested in well, the favorite saying of coaches is closing the gap between where you want to be and or where you are and where you want to be. And yes, I suppose that is true, but it covers a wide spectrum. Um, And so when people want to go for coaching and find out what it's like, my advice is absolutely see if you find a connection with that person. Because if you don't go there. Find a life coach that you connect with. Because then it really might work. And you want to be open to shifting because that's what it's all about. It's from changing maybe bad habits or bad or destructive thinking patterns
Mm.
into something new.
Yeah.
Um, my work has led me to really bring people to a meaningful life, and that meaning is different for every single individual. And it's like Elon Musk said so well. There's got to be a reason why we get up in the morning.
Yeah.
um, there has to be something that is exciting and that inspires us. Otherwise, what is the point? And
Yeah.
that's what I struggled with for so many decades. What was the point? I just couldn't figure it out.
Mm.
And it led me to travel the whole world and have many experiences, and ultimately that was fantastic because it
Yeah.
does expand the yourself, and it boils down to self-love. Emotional intelligence comes in,
Right.
is the foundation.
Right. Now, sorry, you. I think you're back. Yeah, you froze for a second there.
Yes, I'm back. Yes, I'm
Okay,
back.
cool. Now, um, one of the things that I think is, and you really talked about this, is living in the now, living in the moment. Um, that is really something that a lot of people, as you say, they're so stressed out, they don't appreciate that they're actually living right now in this very moment, and that in itself is a wonderful gift. I always compare it to the idea of, winning lotto, because when you get born, when you think of the chances of you being born, when all those other sperm were competing to be, part of the birth, but you were chosen. I mean, it's like you won the lotto when you got born, and just by living, you're actually experiencing these incredible moments, which is life. What are your thoughts on that?
That's absolutely true. Well, there's so much I can say about that. So living in the now means we are absolutely present, and that brings that kind of connection that we were talking about, the sun and the indigenous peoples. It opens us up to so much more. It allows us the freedom. And that's probably the best way to describe it, because our past shackles us down and our future is yet to come and we worry about it. So we get so entangled in this whole past and future that we don't pick up the nuances of life. And there is no joy, because there can't be joy in that which is gone. There can't be joy in that which hasn't come yet. There is only joy and freedom in this very moment. And I want to say that actually brings you closer to God, to Creator, to whatever you might believe in. It brings you closer to that which is real.
Right. Okay. Now, just getting more into your work, have you got some examples or of people you've worked with who've been in a bad place and how you've been able to turn their lives around? Are there a couple you can discuss with us, or just start off with one?
Yes, my work is, in the coaching world, they say, well, you got to find your niche. And I just don't want to, because to me, the human condition is the human condition. And so I work with people from business owners, company directors, right down to the down and out, and the people who are in rehab, and all kinds of people, because the human condition is the human condition. We are all born the same, actually, with that divine spark in us, and then we go through our childhood and our life, and we get absolutely programmed and conditioned by our parents, by society, by the educational system, by everything. And so by the age of about 20, we all run on autopilot, and we don't stop to think about life anymore. And that's just what I love, because it took me so many years to stop and really figure out what is this all about. So I, because of my own childhood, I work with parents and teachers, and I teach them how to bring out the best in their children, how to open up communication.
Right.
That's very much the same in the corporate world, where communication is absolutely crucial.
Right.
Where I also help people to get to know themselves better, because when we get to know ourselves better, we can better deal with our own issues and our emotions and our feelings, which we can't separate from our work life. We can't say, well, feelings and emotions go to one side and now I'm working. It doesn't actually work that way. And I think my biggest thing is to bring back the human side of us into everyday life. And so sometimes I work with parents and teachers. Sometimes I also work with couples that have marital problems, because, really, once again, once we understand what makes us tick, what are our needs, how do we view ourselves, all these things, we can adjust and we can adapt, and we can make things beautiful. So yes, I've saved a few marriages. I've saved a few people's lives who actually had to walk out of a marriage if it was abusive, or whatever the case might be. What else can I tell you? That I think the one that really stands out for me was a person who was diagnosed with cancer, and the doctors gave him 6 months to live, and I, for the hell of it, couldn't swing his head and his mindset getting away from the fear to actually that he could actually heal himself, because we have the ability to heal ourselves from diseases and illnesses. And when I saw this was only going to go one way, it became almost like a sacred journey with this person, where up to the end, the last week of his life, I was able to be with him and guide him through the process. And that was just so deeply, deeply touching. So yes, my work is a wide variety of things. I work with the youth as well because I think this generation of youth now is more lost than ever any generation before them,
Hmm.
and their lives are so busy. Once again, no wonder there's such a big epidemic of ADD and ADHD, and children just grow up without love, without nurturing, without the guidance
Yeah.
that they need.
Yeah. I'm just addressing the side chat and the people watching for the moment. Chris,
Yes.
good to see you here. Could you just keep an eye on the posts, and if anyone wants to ask any questions, please just put your questions into the side chat. And Chris, if you can copy those, and we'll discuss those a bit later. All right, getting back to what we're talking about here, and um, so really, what your life coaching work is about is like forming a relationship with the client and actually then guiding them through whatever it is they're going through. Kind of
Yes, and
summarize
I
it.
think, sorry,
Does that
go ahead, Scott.
does that kind of summarize what your work is about?
Yes, it does, and it's different for every individual that I work with, and that's also the difference between a life coach and an advisor or a counselor or
Right.
somebody who a consultant. I don't follow my agenda, I follow your agenda, whatever it is where you want to make a change
Hmm.
or with your challenges, that's where we go.
Right. Okay. So, do you have members of parliament who you talk to? Do you have? I mean, what's and are they just South Africa? Do you have people overseas? What's the breadth of your clientele?
You're talking about members of parliament. I actually the other day spent some time with a beautiful, beautiful woman who was the first black lady to have a fantastic qualification, degrees of sorts. I'm not sure in ecology,
Right.
and she was quite high up in the government. And well, this is a bit off our topic now, but she said to me, "But Lindy, the system spat us out because the moment you're really trying to make a difference, they don't want to hear it, and they work you out of the system. So that's really how bad it is." And this lady was this person was actually busy organizing and mobilizing a lot of people for the climate change. And then, yeah, then I had to relate the truth to her that climate change is absolute a reality, but climate change is not necessarily caused by human beings,
Mm,
which is what the narrative in the mainstream is,
mm,
But the question is, why is there climate change on all the other planets in our solar system as
yeah.
well? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, but I do work with high profile people, yes. I do have international clients, and that's where we work on Zoom, just like now, or Skype, or whatever. Or I'm close enough to Pretoria and Johannesburg in South Africa, where I see clients one on one
Right.
in person. So
And
yeah, sometimes I'll do groups and whatever the demand is, that's what I do. I do present talks here and there as well. So
right.
at the moment, I think the most popular one is how to thrive in challenging times because hell, the whole world is upside down on so many levels. It's not just climate and economy and
Yeah.
personal and everything is just upside down. Politics is crazy. So and people are pushed to the limit and don't know where to run. And here's the thing, what I very often say to people is that which brought you to this point, which might have brought great success to you in your life, in whichever aspect of your life,
Mm,
is exactly what's holding you back from having a fantastic future.
mm,
So whoever and however and whatever we was in our life served us. But if we continue that, it doesn't actually serve us anymore.
right.
So many of us um, cling on to that story that we are our experiences and we are that story, and we absolutely not that story, but that becomes our identity.
Mm,
And then when going gets tough, um, we don't know where to run, and we don't know how to deal with that. And that's where I come in and I say, hey, breathe. Let's all just learn breathing, because even just by breathing, and it might sound very strange, but even just by breathing, there are hundreds of different chemical reactions and all kinds of reactions that happen in the body. And literally by hacking the body through breathing, we tell the body we are in peacetime, and we get out of that fight or flight and into a more calmer state of being. And for a change, then the oxygen actually goes to the brain and not to all the vital organs and the muscles to run away, so we can think clearly. We make better decisions. And yeah, I teach a lot of people a lot about mindset and how all of that works as well. And now I've gone on such a tangent, I don't even know what you're asking for.
So, okay, just looking at the life coaching aspect, how do people connect with you? I know I've put your website down below the video here, so people can obviously just connect with you that way. But what sort of people should be getting a life coach? I mean, just give a broad base of the sort of people who should be getting someone like you in to give them direction and help.
Scott, even a life coach needs a life coach. Everybody needs a life coach. And the reason is well, two reasons. We all have a blind spot where we just don't see what we are thinking, doing, saying. We all have that blind spot. And the other thing is, we all have, the metaphor I use is, we all have different colored glasses on. And so I look at the world and I see pink, and you look at the world and you see orange, and another person looks at the world and they see green. And it doesn't even help to argue, because we have different perspectives. I think the only person who does not need a life coach is the one who absolutely believes they have it all together, which is not a truth. But a person who is so happy and content with their life exactly as it is, and they do not wish to expand or grow. For the rest of us who know there is more to life than what we've been living, or what we've been experiencing, I say get a life coach.
So what you're saying in effect is if someone feels like they're treading water in their lives and going nowhere, that's where a life coach can help them actually get moving and get things happening in their life again.
Absolutely. If once, excuse me, it's when we have challenges, when we have difficult times, and it helps to learn a better way of looking at it. It helps to learn what to do with our thinking, what to do with our mind. Where does our thinking come from? How does it trigger certain feelings and emotions in the body, which, by the way, we get addicted to? And it's like, we have a certain thinking pattern which we form as children, and by the age of 20, that thinking pattern is set. And then we just rerun that program over and over and over again. And that's why that's when we are on autopilot and we don't even think out of the box. That's just one way we operate. And then it becomes a habit. And then it becomes a personality. And finally, it becomes a temperament. And it needs not be that way, because that way we stagnate. And once again, if we look at nature, there's nothing that is stagnant in nature. It's forever changing.
Yeah.
So that is natural evolution, is to grow and expand through challenges, which are there to teach us something. They are, there are no mistakes and failures in life either. They are our teachers. They are there to bring us this gift of wisdom.
So how do you break the cycle? Talking about, this repetitive cycle that you get stuck in.
That is a very good question, Scott. We need to get off autopilot. First of all, we just need to wake up to the fact that we are on autopilot, that we're not even aware of what we are thinking, that we're not even aware of where it comes from, that we're not even aware of underlying emotions and feelings unless they're very strong. And so when we just can just stop for a moment and say, what am I thinking? And how does it serve me? And where does it come from? Um, and is this a habit? Is this a pattern? Is it always like this? And more often than not, the answer is yes.
Mm.
Um, and when we realize, when we wake up to that, that's when we switch off that autopilot button. And that's what people now call conscious living. And it means being conscious of our thoughts. If we know we are the masters of our ship, if we know we create our reality, if we know that whatever we think, we then have a bodily reaction where we feel, and that we can actually change that to have a different experience. The moment we have a different experience, we grow.
Right.
So it is about becoming conscious of our thoughts. And the question that I ask is, well, does this take me forward in life or not? And if not, why on earth am I thinking this thought? Because you see, whatever we think then triggers the brain and the body, and we've got a release of chemicals. Those chemicals, I don't want to get too technical, but those chemicals, hormones, neurotransmitters, whatever, they go physically into the cells.
Mm.
And that has an impact on the DNA. My goodness. That means we can either age, or we can age slower, or we can not age, or we can fall ill, we can have diseases. It has an impact on the body.
Right. Now,
And so we want to change our thinking, because the moment we have a different thought, now the brain literally forms new networks of neurons that connect. And it's a different pathway then that
right.
forms in the brain that releases different chemicals in the body, has a new experience. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have emotions and feelings. My goodness, that is the way we experience this third dimensional world.
Mm.
I mean, you can just think of when you have an experience where there's intense emotion involved, that gets ingrained in the brain, and that's how you actually remember it so well. And the more intense the emotion is with that event, the better you will remember it. So feelings and emotions is the way we perceive our world and engage with our world. So the only question then is, are these constructive emotions? Do they light the fire in my heart? Does it make me radiate? Does it make me filled with energy and vitality and joy for life? And that is really the question. If not, the question is, why do I have these feelings? What can I do about them? How can I change my thinking so that I can feel differently and actually be free and not be a slave to my own thinking?
Right. So that's why having a relationship with the client is so important, because you've got to really be able to relate to that person and understand where they're coming from, and then give advice based on that. Is that basically what you're talking about?
Yes, and I think people who are, I really need to talk about highly sensitive people,
Mm.
because there are only about 20% of the population. So all of us, if we are not sensitive, at least we know of someone who is very, very sensitive. And these are people that walk through life like sponges almost.
Mm.
And this is, and why I actually want to address this is because it's very helpful for a sensitive person to understand why they are the way they are. So sensitive people, and there are, of course, it's on a sliding scale, but sensitive people walk through life like sponges, and they pick up everything around them,
Mm.
emotions of other people, and they might all of a sudden feel depressed and they don't know why. Sensitive people can actually sometimes even pick up on your thoughts. So it is a curse if you don't know how to deal with it, and it is a blessing if you do know how.
Hmm.
And I always liken it to, it's, if I were to say, Scott, let's take half of the skin off your hand, half of the layers, and now go and touch hot things, cold things, just feel everything around you. You would jump
Mm.
because it is, you experience it so intensely, and that's very much how sensitive people experience it. So sensitive people need to detox, they need to have quiet time, they need to have time on their own where they can actually wring out that sponge and become themselves again.
Mm.
They are the empaths in the in life, they are the caring people in life, they are the ones always being there for the underdogs. They are the shoulders for everybody else in life. And very often they struggle with boundaries, and they can't say no. And that is a huge issue among sensitive people. So got off on another tangent. So bring me back to the point here, please.
Not
What are
a
we talking?
not a problem. Now, I'm just addressing the side chat. Are there any questions people would like to ask of Lindy? CH has just said here, I know too many people due to the negativity they are depressed on tranquilizers and sleeping tablets.
And that is simply an escape.
Yeah.
That is absolutely just an escape. If we don't know how to deal with things, the easiest way to deal with it is to numb it. And you know, this actually boils back to the the most important thing that I want everybody on this planet to learn, and that is to love themselves.
Right.
And it is not arrogant, it is actually a responsibility. If we were loved into life, how can we not love ourselves? We are like a puzzle piece of a 7.5 billion of people, you know, a puzzle of 7.5 billion pieces, and every piece is different. We don't need to fit into any or conform to anything. We are unique, and that's what we need to recognize.
Mm.
That whether we're different or the same or whatever, we all have something very unique, and we have every reason to love ourselves. And in fact, we 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 need to love ourselves as if our life depends on it, because it does. The way we feel about ourselves is the way we feel about others, actually, and is also the way we feel about the whole world.
Right.
It's the hurt and the damaged people in this world that don't love themselves, that hurt and damage other people. When we love ourselves, we are filled up. We don't walk around with this hole in our insides.
Mm.
We are filled up. We are whole. Um, and we treat ourselves with respect and love and honor. We value ourselves. That's when we shine. And when we shine, that's when we can make a difference and light the fires in other people. We cannot serve and help and support or really make a big difference in another's life if we are depleted, if we are not whole. So it is our responsibility to really love ourselves. And that is probably the most difficult thing to teach the human race,
Yeah.
which is gold.
Now, I have to tell everybody watching here tonight that we've been so lucky because when I did a test run with Lindy yesterday, her screen kept on freezing because of the poor internet. So I'm so pleased that it's basically been, clear sailing tonight. Now,
Absolutely.
okay, so I'm just going to check the side chat, see if there are any questions in there. No. Okay. Now, would you like to just tell people who are watching and those who watch this video later, or give them a message? What's your message to people?
If the one most important thing is what I just said, is to that we have a responsibility to love ourselves, because when we do, we become whole. And that entails also loving what we don't like about ourselves. We all have a light side and we all have a dark side, and that is okay. But you see, we're not okay with it. And that creates like a pendulum, and we swing. We swing from the light to the dark and back to the light. And the more we swing, the more we see the dark in us, the more we try and run away from that. And people are not going to like what I say, but very often people run to religion as a ways to try and escape that which they don't like in themselves.
Mm.
People might go to extreme sports. People might go to drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, any kind of substance to numb themselves, happy pills, whatever, just to get away from what they don't like in themselves. And I'm saying, hey, we're all human. We live in a world of polarity. That is life. And so we can stop swinging the moment we bring the darkness and embrace it, and love that too. Because only then, when we acknowledge it, when we embrace it, is when we can say, oh, okay, I want to actually shift this, and I want to bring more light
So
onto the dark.
what you're saying is rather than running away from that aspect of your life, you actually embrace it, and then you can deal with it and change it.
That's exactly, and that's the only way that we can actually shift it. We can't run away from who we are. Oh my goodness, that was a good lesson for me. So yes, we can't run away from that which we don't like in ourselves. And often I literally ask clients to go and stand in front of the mirror and look themselves in the eye until they can see what I know lives in them, until they can see what God sees in them if they are religious,
Right.
and start to treat themselves the way they would treat someone who they absolutely loved and adored. It's very easy to see what someone thinks about themselves. You just need to see how they treat others. You know, the bullies in the world, they are the most hurt people. They are the people who hate themselves the most. And it's those ones that need to be taught as well to just love themselves and become whole. And that's where we light that fire. And that's where that light spreads.
So what's the hardest type of personality to deal with as a life coach? I mean, you've just mentioned bullies. I mean, is there a particular type of person that's harder to actually help fix and get them moving again?
Not really, not really, because those that don't want to shift don't actually come to me. The people who come to me are the people who realize I am in trouble. I've got my back against the wall with myself, with my situation, with my life, with my career,
Yeah.
with my kids, with my whatever. And so there's an openness to, I know something needs to shift. Let's get that shift done. Um, you know what actually surprised me is I would work with a client for a long time and not see the shift that I would have wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then one fine morning, that person just wakes up and everything turns around.
Mm.
And even I am amazed. And so we should never get discouraged about ourselves. The journey is the journey, and we take as long as we take to learn something, to shift something. You know, just I don't know how much time we still have, but can I
Go ahead, yeah,
give
absolutely.
an example of an experiment that the NASA was done with the NASA astronauts, where they gave them glasses that actually turned the world upside down. So once they had these glasses on, everything was seen upside down. And they had to wear these for, I think it was 21 or 29 days, I'm not sure. And those that kept on those glasses after 21 or 29 days, can't remember, their brains actually flipped back in a way that they now, with the glasses on, saw the world as right way up. Those astronauts that took it off here and there, their brains didn't make new connections to flip around the world. So what we learn from that is if we want to create a new habit, we need to, without taking off those glasses, without falling back into the old pattern, we need to give it time of at least 21 or 29 days, diligently shifting the mind, literally creating new neural nets in the brain that'll create a new attitude, that'll create new thinking, that'll create a new experience and new feelings and emotions. So so what I'm saying is there has to be a patience, there has to be a trust that we can actually do that. And there's no one that cannot grow.
Yeah.
We all have that ability. I've seen people of 80 years old who have changed their lives, who have become younger, who have become healthier, who have finally let go of old traumas and wounds and programming that didn't serve them. So we're never too old to learn.
Yeah. Now, I've got a CH has said here, many people have no direction and are self-destructing due to unemployment, no future, no money, losing houses, etc. What advice do you give to them? You know, that these are the people who feel that there's no hope in life.
I think that is really a difficult situation because, and especially in South Africa, but all over the world, this is happening. We are just stretched to the limit on every possible way. Um, and I think there's no one quick solution to that. Ultimately, the bottom line is attitude. Attitude is everything. We can be down and out. We can be on the street. If we believe that we can get through this, can get out of this, can change our circumstance, then we can. And what we focus on, we create more of as well. So what do we focus on? And that is the hardest thing to tell someone who is absolutely down and out, maybe have lost everything. Say, hey, you got to be happy and think positive. No, thinking positively is really like putting a plaster on a fat big boil. It doesn't serve. It's not going to heal it. It just takes step by step changing the attitude and knowing and understanding that it doesn't have to stay that way. There's always, every question has an answer. Every problem has a solution. It's two sides of this very same coin.
Yeah.
So I don't believe there are situations where there is no solution. There's always a solution. The problem is just as we get caught up in these situations, we very often default to destructive thinking, which creates the destructive emotion, and that keeps the cycle running. There's no way that we can make a shift in life with destructive thought forms, thought patterns, and emotions. And that is the biggest dilemma, not the circumstance, but the attitude that comes with that. And are we even aware that we can shift and change that? And for the most part, if we look at the completely down and out people, whatever their circumstance, the answer is no. They don't know there's a different way. They don't know there is a solution.
Yeah.
And that is tough. That is really, really tough.
Well, it's interesting because it's also the people that are around them who are in the same situation, so it kind of just perpetuates that. But there are two remarkable people that are changing lives when it comes to the situation that CH mentioned here, where people are down and out. And one is the pastor at Philadelphia Ark. Have you heard of that? Philadelphia Ark? It's in
Actually, no.
it's near Hartbeespoort. and he's got about 500 basically down and out white people living on his farm. And
Okay.
he's got them doing things, and they're now starting to get their act together and doing some wonderful stuff. And
Oh, that is so fantastic.
yeah,
That is so great.
and the other one
Because
is
it, yes,
the other one is
yeah,
Marius Ruiz, who's taking on board young men, who 19, 20, who are stuck in these squatter camps, and he's now even, I believe, extending to young women to also go through what's basically bushcraft, and they get taught bushcraft and things like that, and they then go and work on farms as someone who's productive and helping, you know, keep that farmer safe. So there are a couple of people who are doing remarkable things and so proactive, and the change in the attitude of these people once they've actually got this direction is extraordinary.
that is fantastic. And yes, we all need to stand together, Scott. I mean, we are not little islands. We are there
Mm.
for each other. And there's another story that I want to tell, and that is how do we become resilient? Because these are tough times. And so there's this lovely story. Can I tell a story? Do
Yeah,
do we still have time?
please go ahead. Yeah, absolutely, you got time.
And some of you might have heard the story. This is my version of it anyway.
Yeah,
There was this wise man that lived on the edge of a village, and one day there was this beautiful looking stallion that came galloping through the village.
right.
And this wise man looked at it and he saw, oh, I want the stallion. And he opened the gate of the kraal, and the stallion ran in, and he closed the gate. And the village people came and they said, oh, it's so fantastic. It's so good. It's so wonderful. What's happened to you?
Yeah,
And the wise man said, well, maybe. And then a few days later, the stallion had had enough. So he jumped the fence and he disappeared into the bushes.
yeah.
And the villagers came and they said, oh, this is so bad. And the wise man said, well, maybe. And a few days later, the stallion came galloping back, but this time he had a whole horde of mares with him. And so the wise man opened the gate again. And so they came galloping. And of course, the villagers said, oh, this is so good. What's happened? And once again, the wise man said, well, maybe. And then his young son got on the horse and on the stallion, rode it, fell off and broke his leg in 1,000 pieces. And the villagers once again said, oh, this is so terrible and so bad. And the wise men said, well, maybe. And then the war broke out, and all the young men were called up to do service in the war, and this young man couldn't go. And so basically, the moral of the story is really, is something good or is something bad?
Mm.
And we have to look at the world today in South Africa and elsewhere, and we have to say, well, is this good or is this bad?
Yeah. Well, it's funny
And find out the wrong.
it's
Yes.
it's funny you talk about someone riding a horse and breaking their leg, because on Thursday evening I've got a live stream where I'm talking to Tabitha van Rooyen, who
Okay.
people here probably won't know who she is, but she's actually used to be a jockey, and she was the first South African female jockey, and she won a lot of races. And I'll be putting up a video in the next day or two where you'll be able to see her, racing and stuff like that. And she actually fell off a horse. The horse fell on her and broke her back, and she's now in a wheelchair. And that
Oh,
brings me to your story about, things that happen to you in life and stuff like that. And she's a very brave lady, but yeah, we meet some fascinating people by doing these live streams, and that's why we call it Real People, because we actually get to know them and what reality is for them in life. Now,
fantastic.
I've got a couple more questions that have come through here. Charles has asked, does the reality Lindi create for herself replace the security and worrying about the future? Does she prep? Does she have security at her house?
Do I have security at my house? That's a very good question. Yes, I've got three barking dogs. So hopefully, luckily the alarm system didn't go off tonight because to quieten the dogs when they decide there's something outside is quite something.
Yeah.
I live in nature because that's just where I keep my sanity and get my peace and tranquility. Um, and yes, no, I don't have the security that other people have. Uh, this brings me back to the good and the bad,
Yeah.
and can we find good in our situations and in our circumstances? And for me, it is so clear and so evident. Just to give you an example, the I live in the Machalis Mountains, and the community here in the past year or two, but especially in the past year and more intensely so, have pulled together in a way that I did not think was possible. We have security guys. Our men in our valley stand together. We're all on a radio system. There's a radio call every night. We get drilled in how to actually communicate on the radios. We are now a few people that are being trained in first aid and doing the whole paramedic thing. We have identified all the skilled people, all in the various skills in our community. Um, we stand together in such a big way. We fight fires together because fires are a big danger in threat and reality in our valley. Um, so we have these massive vehicles with water tanks, and we just fight fires all together. And then the women would come and they would feed the men. And, all of a sudden, we all know our neighbors,
Mm.
and we know what the properties look like, and we know when someone might not be there. And if anything goes wrong, we are there. Our men are there in an instant. We have
Mm.
patrols. We actually have had a whole fundraising drive that enabled us, which was so hugely successful. It enabled us to put up cameras on the piece of tar road. We've got one tar road going through our valley.
Mm.
So the love, the caring, the compassion, the standing together, getting together and actually make changes have had a huge impact on our valley. How can that be bad?
Well,
How can
I just want to say that you were just talking that maybe story. The wise man said maybe, and you think of how the adverse circumstances that people face in South Africa today has actually drawn that community together, which is, as you say, cause and effect. Yeah.
Yes, it is our opportunity to, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, our peoples used to, to know each other. We knew our neighbors and they were miles off. It wasn't like that even just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So we have the opportunity to, in this adversity, it actually just brings out the best in us. We care more, we do more, we are there, we support more. And that makes us expand and grow and be more beautiful people. How that's fantastic. That's just exciting. But
Yeah.
to come back to the security, I'm not a religious person, but I walk a very close path with God, and my quiet time is most important to me. And and yes, you could say I pray for my safety, and I do so daily,
Mm.
and for my people that work on my farm as well. I What else do I do? I don't hold on to the fear. I choose very carefully, and I'm a very sensitive person, so I choose very carefully what I expose myself to. How much of the bad news do I want to take in? Do I balance that out with all the good news, like what I've just shared about my community where I live?
Mm.
So I make very sure that I don't get pulled into this downward spiral of all the negative things, because like I said, what we focus on is what we create more of.
But
And
don't you
in
think
my
that's out
specific case,
of don't you think that's out of the control of the minority groups today with what's happening with the ANC government? That's the reality, is that they're just screwing the country.
That's absolutely so. And once again, is it good or is it bad? What
Yeah.
do we want to do about that? Where is this all going to lead? And is it not true that the house of cards has to tumble, that the city has to burn to the ground
Before you rebuild it.
before we can rebuild the
Mm.
city? So to me, these are, and the hectic situation in South Africa, to me, is just a sign. I'm actually delighted. Yes, the worse it gets, the better, because the sooner we can start to rebuild. And I promise you, that is my attitude.
Mm.
We want to make sure that our attitude stays constructive. We want to make sure that we do our absolute best for ourselves and for others. And we constantly ask, is there another way that I can do it?
Mm.
Is there another place where I need to live? Do I actually need to prepare? What do I need to prepare? What will I do if ESCOM fails? It doesn't help to sit and complain about these things.
Mm.
There needs to be a plan in place, because with a plan, you bring peace of mind, more peace of mind, that keeps you, that pulls you out of that fight or flight and the
Mm.
stress mode.
Mm.
So yes, things are hectic. So yes, we have to make sure that we don't only hang on to the bad news. I refuse to look at um, the graphic details of a farm attack.
Mm.
I just don't go there,
I
because
can't go there
there's
either.
no
It's
hope.
awful. Awful.
It just doesn't help me. Um, so I hope that answers the question. We can always choose to find the constructive
Mm.
in any situation. And why we fear the future so much? It's simply because we can't see it.
Mm.
We can see the past, we can't see the future. So that doesn't mean that there's a disaster looming. I'm saying the phoenix will rise from the ashes.
Mm.
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
Well,
It pushes us to be creative.
yeah,
It pushes us to shine our lights, to be more than what we used to be. We don't grow in our comfort zones. Never, ever.
yeah,
We grow through challenges. We grow through adversity.
yeah. One of the interesting things I find is that we are living in such extraordinary times, and I always say that I think that as a man in his sort of early 60s, um, when I think of my life and how things have changed over that life, I think people of our age were extraordinarily blessed to actually experience what's happened in the world over the last 50, 60 years. Because, when we talk about the future, which you've just mentioned, and what is going to happen in the future, um, there are so many huge issues that are coming up. And I hear what you're saying about the phoenix will rise again, but um, we're at a point in the world today where um, the world's in a very bad place, and I think South Africa, with what's happening in South Africa, is probably ahead of the world in being in that really bad place. So it's going to be very interesting to see what we're going to see what happens in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
The trump card is being played,
Yeah, I'm a Trump supporter.
and the way that you eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Mm.
I think the times we are living now are even more blessed, because we get to see and live through these transitions and through the changes, that which is falling is bigger than most people actually know.
Mm.
It is even multidimensional, and it is truly a war between the light and the dark. And we can only do our little bit. Every person, every individual. And our biggest responsibility is to find the truth, because it is so hidden. And if you know how disinformation works,
Fake
it's
news.
the truth and just slight left of the truth, and it becomes very confusing.
Yeah.
And we have to use so much discernment. But the beast that is falling and busy falling is going to take a while, and it's going to be a very, very hard fall. I mean, if you look at the prophecies, this time has always been prophesized. And
Mm.
yes, I remember, when we were kids, people were standing on on the corners of the streets saying it, the end is nigh, the end is
Yeah, I
nigh.
remember
And
that.
but I mean, we can really see the shift happening in the financial world, in the political world, um, and even on a personal level. And Scott, we can even tie this to the whole shift in the cosmos, and the shift in the coming from the center of the galaxy. I mean, all the planets are shifting. Everything is shifting. We are
Mm.
being bombarded by radiation, gamma rays, and all kinds of solar rays, and goodness knows what. And all these things have an effect on us. The brain is electrical. The heart is magnetic, or the other way around. I don't know. But so these rays that bombard us actually force us to look at our stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why this is such a crucial time. And and so the dark becomes darker and the light becomes lighter, and it's just beautiful chaos. And I think that is a blessing. There is just so much confusion.
Well, I,
And
I
the thing is, before any breakthrough, there's always confusion.
yeah.
So confusion in the world, yes, it forces us to come home to who we truly are, and to become more, to expand, to be beautiful, shine
Well,
the light,
I
love light.
I can see why people need a life coach today with everything that's going on. Now, just talking to people who are watching, and okay, Lindy, will you remain in South Africa is a question. And also the other question that we got here, Charles has asked, does the reality Lindy creates for herself replace? Oh, we've already responded to that one, Melina. Yeah. So, will Lindy remain in South Africa?
The answer is a resounding yes, until I have no choice anymore. And I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I've traveled the world. I've lived in, oh gosh, my second son was born in Beijing. I lived in Hong Kong. I lived in Melbourne. I loved Australia, but it was never home. I think
Yeah.
after the experience with the Sun people, and I've had the privilege, as I think I was about 21, I had the privilege of going into nature that was raw bush, with lions and elephants, no fences. It wasn't a game park yet. It was during the war, and it was on the border, and that would just lifted the excitement. It made it more exciting, but I experienced absolute pure nature. And I just love Africa. I love the Kalahari. I just love this place. And I wouldn't want to leave it for anything. We are really being challenged. I mean, how many nations are there where there are 11 languages, where you got to get all these people to work together,
Mm.
where the difference between rich and poor is so enormous, where the difference in education, in even intellectual ability, is massive.
Mm.
I mean, this makes for good growth, damn it, doesn't it? And I want to,
I can see why you're a life coach.
and I just want to share this, because this is I've learned so much from this as well. We think it's the intellect that and the education that's taking us forward, and it's not. That is brain stuff. We need to get into the heart. We need to live from the heart. It's the intellectual people that actually struggle the most to get over themselves, to get beyond themselves, and to just surrender and live a beautiful life from the heart. And why I'm saying this is I have a beautiful farm worker whose father was a prophet and a visionary and a healer, and he actually healed a blind person.
Wow.
That person ran off at the end of the healing because he thought he would never be able to pay this guy because he made him see. But now this beautiful farm worker of mine has has a bit of those talents as well. And they are deep, he is deeply religious and goes and prays in the mountain for hours, knows that he can actually heal himself, spreads light, laughs, sings all day. And I look at this person, I think, you know, you don't have it well, and you live such a primitive life and what we would call not a privileged life.
Yeah.
And I, in some aspects, I question that. What is privilege? Is it really to? Is it really all about money? Is it all about intellect, about brains, about education? This is a simple human being, and he lives a better life than most people I know.
Yeah.
And he's not very bright, and he's not very this or not very that, but he is just the most exquisite, most loving, most wise person that I know. So, we need to question our perspective.
Yeah. I've got
So,
another.
no, I think I'll stay in South Africa until I really have to move. I just love this place.
I've got
I
another.
love the town.
I've got another question here for you from Pablo, and he says, "Can someone get PTSD or borderline personality disorder because of the situation happening here in South Africa?"
Of course. Of course. In South Africa, in our generation, where our young men had to go to the border and experience horrific um, events, and yeah, it is just traumatic, and a lot of those men have never ever healed from that. And back in those days, there wasn't such help, the help that is available today. So you got PTSD, and that's just the way it was, and uh, yeah, it influenced their lives greatly, and for some to this day, it still does. It changes you forever to go through these traumatic events. Um, is it happening in South Africa today? Of course it is. It is happening everywhere. But once, when we go through a traumatic experience, and it doesn't matter whether it's an attempted rape or whether it's a rape or whether it's a molestation or whether it's an armed robbery or whether you witness someone being killed in front of you or hacked to pieces. I mean, all these things have such a massive impact on the psyche. Of course, that's PTSD. And then just remember that children growing up in abusive homes also have PTSD, and that, growing up in a situation where it's really very, very bad, we call that complex trauma. It's trauma upon trauma upon trauma on a daily basis. That's no different, really.
Wow.
It has a huge impact on that life, and it'll never be the same. And the healing from such a thing takes such a long time and such deep work. The same with PTSD. It needs healing. It needs support. It needs help. And there are a lot of therapists and good people that actually can help a person through PTSD. But I mean, it is a reality. We can be in an accident.
Yeah.
You were talking about the lady who's a jockey and ended up in a wheat train. Well, that's PTSD for you. I mean, so we can pick it up anywhere, everywhere. But in South Africa specifically, I think that is why we have work to do.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility into how we live our daily lives. I don't go a single day without my quiet time, and I actually create my day. I create my life. I create everything that I can. I pray. I as if I've already received whatever it is that your specific preference is. Make time for you. Make sure that you light the fire in you, that you can actually handle whatever happens. Be diligent. I mean, I've got a Telegram group that tells us where the protests are, when we can go where, and where roads are blocked, and then of course we're going to avoid that. But and we have to have that extra alertness and awareness, and so much the more do we have to breathe, do we have to love, do we have to open up, do we have to have quiet time, do we have to find the joy in life, the meaning in life, and everything that makes us thrive.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Well, I have a question for you on that same subject. How does someone
Yes.
know if they have PTSD? What are the signals that you have this ailment?
Yeah, I hate the word disease, or really any label that would put on something.
Yeah.
Um, People with PTs, and I'm not a fundy. This is work for psychologists and psychiatrists, but there are certain symptoms. The most obvious of those is someone who would maybe withdraw and become quiet. There would be a personality change. There might be definite depression, um, things like that. So I wouldn't want to expand on that because that's not my field of expertise.
Right.
Um, but usually there's a big personality change, and there is depression. There might be anger. Um, so yeah, it's that's I think that's as much as I want to say about that.
Not a problem. Um, Bob asked, have you faced any racial prejudice as a white farmer?
Well, look, I live on 18 hectares. I don't actually farm. I fool around. I say fool around. I play around. I really would want to get permaculture going, and permaculture is just one more way where we need to make a difference and can make a difference. Change the whole way we've been programmed to do agriculture. There is a different way that actually is sustainable, that feeds the land. Um,
Well, I can put you
Racial
in touch.
prejudice.
I can put you in touch with Nikki. Nikki is fantastic with permaculture. And also Mia. They're, a couple of people in our community here in Loving Life who are just what they don't know about permaculture and those sort of ways of growing food. It's not worth knowing. Amazing people.
Oh, that's fantastic. I better get them out here and get them going. Yeah, it takes quite an investment to actually prepare the land and to shift everything,
Mm,
from food forests, veggie gardens, swales, and the whole lot.
yeah,
But to answer the question, prejudiced, yeah, it's everywhere, and racism is everywhere, from black onto white and white onto black, and it's being fueled by the media because the more you
yeah,
divide people, the more you can come in and take the loot, and that is just the motto that has been playing out for years and years and years. If there's any movement that is trying to tell you you got to be this religion, or you got to be that culture, or you got to have this skin color, and separate and segregate, just know there's a game being played. Um, and at the moment, the race card is really being played, and people buy into it because any highly emotional topic, it's just so easy to create an explosion in that.
mm,
I don't, in personally in my life, I very seldom come across racism. Um, Someone towards me that just doesn't happen because I don't necessarily move in those circles. Um, and I don't actually focus on that because I'm really blind. I'm blind to color and religion and race and all of that stuff too. It's not about that. It's to me, it's about like being with people that are like-minded. You know, when I lived overseas, I didn't seek out all the expats. I didn't seek out all the South Africans and made friends with them. No, I seeked out those people that I really had a connection with, that we actually shared something.
Sure.
So no, I don't really come across. I come across racism in the valley, and we are shifting that with out of necessity because the community stands together. And you know, one farmer says, I'm not going to help that guy to fight fires, and we say, yes you are. You know, you are going to help him. And if someone is called out being a racist, we call that out. We call it out. It's rubbish. It needs to end.
Well,
you know,
one of those ladies that I mentioned is actually here in the side chat. That's Nikki Cruden. And
hello, Nikki. Hello, Nikki.
Nikki, Lindy wants to actually get into permaculture. So Lindy's website is just below this video. So if you go in there, you can send Lindy a direct email and get in contact with her. And yeah, I think you guys will have some interesting things to work together on.
Fantastic.
And HS has raised a very, very good point. And he says in 2019, people should stop playing the race card. And my view on all this is that, you know, when someone's called a racist, it's BS, because the whole term has lost its relevance. Because, you know, if you don't like what someone does, it's racist. If you know, it's got absolutely no relevance. It's like an expletive. It's like using the F word. You know, it is completely ridiculous, that whole area. And I think what HS has said hits the nail on the head. You know, if someone says something that is offensive, well, you know, you give them a clap or you respond to it. But, you know, to bring everything into this R word is just ridiculous.
Yes. And yet it is so easy to sweep people up playing that race card. Or the religion card, or the poverty versus wealth card, or whatever. And what I always say is stand back and look at the big picture, and we'll see this massive bird, and the left wing and the right wing actually belong to the same bird.
Yeah, of course they do.
And it's all a game. And if we allow ourselves to get drawn into that, we actually become the victims of that game.
You know what?
We are not.
We've gone way off topic.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
Okay, now look, we've been. I think we could talk for hours. We've been on for 90 minutes now, so I know your electricity is generated.
I'm good, actually. I'm very good.
Okay. I'm just going to see if there are any other questions that people have to ask. I've got a few moderators here. Thanks, moderators, for the great work that you're doing. We got them talking about this R word.
You see, if we love ourselves, how could there be anything in creation that we wouldn't love?
Yeah, exactly. Now, guys who are following the live stream at the moment, here's your opportunity to ask questions. We'll be shutting down this live stream shortly, because I know that we'll need to go and get some sleep, and so here's your chance to ask questions. Okay, while we're just waiting for those to come through, Lindy, now we've touched on where South Africa is going. And tomorrow night, I'm actually talking to the guy who owns and operates Eureka, which is, again, one of these little settlements like Orania. And that's going to be quite an interesting discussion. But do you think that this evolution of like these cultural enclaves like Orania is a result of what is happening in South Africa? Is this like the maybe situation where things are forming as a result of what's going on in South Africa in general?
Absolutely, and that's why I said, we are getting. No, I didn't say this, but we are getting more and more polarized in in the world because of just what's happening. And so it's natural, I think it's just a natural thing for some people to say, well, let's go all and live on our own, and that is good. If works for them, that is just wonderful. um, I just don't think it's got so much to do with skin color. It's got to do with people's values. um, and yeah, I don't even know what I want to say about that. People need to do whatever works for them, as long as they have love in their hearts, as long as they have joy in their lives, as long as their life has meaning and there is a reason and a purpose. Because if there's no reason and purpose to life, then why the hell are we here? And we probably will be taken out. I don't even believe there is something like an untimely death. When it's time, it's time.
Now,
And so we
CH,
make sure that we use our time wisely
CH
and
is
not to take life too seriously. And that is such a challenge in this time. We can't
absolutely.
take life too seriously.
And CH has asked, where will Lindy go when the shit hits the fan? And Villy has asked, do you both support self-determination like the Volksstaat and an independent Western Cape?
Okay, the first question, where will I go when the shit hits the fan? Well, it has already. It is hitting the fan. We're in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of it. It might
So,
get worse. No, it is actually going to get worse.
yeah,
And as I've been told, just stay out of the way of the marauding hordes.
yeah,
And that's really what I tend to do. I actually live off grid. I actually have some prep because it gives me peace of mind. Will I use it? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Does it matter? I don't know.
yeah.
But
So you're going to
it's
stay?
already hit the fan. The popo has hit the fan. We
Yeah,
are in it. How long it's going to take? Well, no one knows. But as long as my life has purpose and meaning, I will stay alive. That's absolutely what I'm convinced of. There are no coincidences. Um, Even in the most dire of situations. So I would not advise, when things get absolutely chaotic, to live in the city,
yeah. That's going to be
because
bad
where's
news.
your water come from? Can you actually get out of the city? Are you safe where you are? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves,
Yeah,
and make sure that this has been discussed on the channel already. Make sure you actually have a plan in place.
yeah,
Bunking down is probably the best way. I would be very hesitant to stay in the city once, if it really gets bad, because we might get stuck there.
yeah,
But who knows? The thing is, attitude is everything. We need to not be blind to what is happening, and at the same time make all the preparations and all the planning that you need to give you peace of mind, and have peace of mind, and know that your life has purpose, if it has,
yeah. You know what
and
I've
be joyful, and see where you can make a contribution, if that's what makes you happy.
Yeah. You know what I've actually really picked up in this discussion we've had tonight, which is fabulous, is that, you know, you look at things from a totally different perspective to most people. And I think that's really what life coaching is all about, is actually giving people a different perspective and building on that. Now, we have another question here from Villy. Um, do you both support self-determination like the Volksstaat and an independent Western Cape? And this is something that you basically just touched on, about people actually getting out the cities and, you know, finding somewhere that's safe. So, do you want to add to that?
I actually don't support that. And the reason is, so we have a group of people that say, okay, we're all white and we're all Christian and we're all this and that and the other, and you tick a few boxes and we now going to group together. And then in that group you'll find, isn't there a joke about the three burkis or two burkis and they'll create three churches or something? I mean, we can just never agree on anything. So in that community,
those communities do include the other minority groups like Indians and Coloreds, and it's not just white people.
If I had a choice,
yeah,
between living in that community or having a completely, at this point, probably unthinkable situation in South Africa where every group has the same amount of say, then I would opt for the second one. Because ultimately, to me, it's about working together. I wouldn't want to segregate more and divide more if it's not necessary. We have a natural tendency to gravitate towards our own. And that, like I said, has to do with values, not so much skin color or race or religion or whatever. We naturally gravitate towards people who are like us. And that is beautiful and that is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. We should not, neither should, we shouldn't enforce a group of people living together that have nothing in common. That is unnatural. So do I support a Volksstaat? I don't think so. To me, that would really be the last choice.
Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions in here. Wow.
But I guess if I had to live in a place like that, I would try to find all the things that are wonderful about it. It's bad.
Yeah.
Just adapt to whatever the circumstances are.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to be shutting down the live stream soon. We've been going for nearly 2 hours. So you asked me earlier today, you said, will we be going for about an hour because of, the amount of electricity and stuff like that. So it's been fantastic that we've been able to have this extra time talking to you.
Well, if all goes dark, then no, it's because
you've disappeared. Is there something
it does need an upgrade? It does need an upgrade.
Is there something you'd like to say to the group watching at the moment? There are about 100 people watching here.
I think specifically to our situation in South Africa, there is a fine line that we need to walk, because we can't stick our heads in the sand. And I consider myself to be privileged enough. I've known about, the alternative information and the truth of what's really happening in the world. And I've been into these things for close on 12 years, if not more. And so this is not new to me. It was expected. I knew it was coming. So I think I had more of a time to adapt, and now we're just in it. And so what is important is really having that balance between the alertness and preparing ourselves and being okay with not being okay, not accepting, but understanding what is happening, and yet not being pulled into the deep darkest pits because of it. Because once again, is it good or is it bad? There are so many beautiful things that come out of this already and can come out of this. And our most important job is to check our mindset and our attitude. Where are we with this? How does this make me feel? How can I shift this? Is this constructive? If I do this, how will I feel about myself if I do this?
Yeah.
And just be so aware of what's happening in our minds and in our thoughts and in our feelings, and keeping ourselves in a place of lightness. And it's not always easy. It really isn't. And we work through that. And when we hit trauma and we hit terrible conditions and experiences, then we go for help. There are people that deal with trauma, and we have to go through that because we need to be whole. We need to heal.
Yeah.
Because that's where we shine our light. So yes, we deal with very, very serious situations, and we can't take life too seriously. We always have to find something to laugh about.
Yeah. Just for clarity, you aren't a psychologist, you are actually a life coach. They're two very different things. So you don't deal with psychological issues like PTSD and stuff like that, but what you do is you help people find meaning in their lives. There's a huge difference between the two. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, you are, Scott.
And just for those people watching and who view the video later, the link to Lindy's website will be directly below this video. Please feel free to contact her, and if you feel like she can help you with moving your life forward, she's the lady to speak to.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank
Been
you.
a-
Yes, you are most welcome to be in touch with me. If you've never actually had coaching, well, I always offer a free session so that you can find if this thing actually works for you. But I think these days it's not a weird concept anymore. Most people actually do know what coaching is, and if you don't, well, try it out. The first session will be free, so so you're most welcome to be in touch with me.
Now, there is an email contact in Lindy's website, and there's also information about her, and she's a fascinating lady. We've only just touched the surface, and there was so much more we could have said about her history. But time is always an issue once we get started and chatting. And so, all right, guys, look, thank you so much for being here. Okay, now Charles has just asked one question. We'll just take this one question, then we'll shut down the...
All right.
Okay, he says, where is the dividing line between being informed and negativity?
Scott, what do you think? Where's the how do you, in other words, what is the line between being informed and being negative?
Or negativity. I guess what he's saying is that being informed about what's happening in South Africa automatically gives you a negative view on life. So where do you draw the line between being informed and, as a result of being informed, feel negative about life?
Right. Well, that is a good question, and that brings us back to the wise man and the beautiful stallion.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, is it good or is it bad?
Yeah.
Really? If we, like I said, we don't grow when we are comfortable, when we are in our comfort zones. We grow through challenges. We grow through adversity. And that's the whole point of life.
And that's where you come in as a life coach.
So we shouldn't shun any of this adversity as long as we stay alive. there's something to learn. But if we get caught up in the negativity, well, we might actually not survive. Who knows if we will survive? And if we don't, then maybe it wasn't our turn to survive. I don't know. But while we are here, I mean, we can get so worked up and so stressed that we give ourselves heart attacks. And there was no farm robber or farm attack close to us, but we panicked ourselves into a cancer or a diabetes or a depression, and we need all this medical treatment. And then we don't survive what we could have survived because our attitude didn't help us.
I heard this.
So, careful for that as well.
I heard
so
this. Sorry, Karen.
there are gazillion ways to die.
Yeah. I heard this wonderful saying, and that's about when you worry, and that is that 80% of worries never happen. They never eventuate. 10% of worries you can deal with. Another 6% of worries might be harder, but you can sort them out. And that leaves you with a tiny percentage of worries that you're worrying, and with all these other worries that are happening. And if you can't change them, why worry about them? So, when you think about it, worrying is really just a waste of time.
It is, and I think it's the Buddhists that also say, it's either you can do something about the worry and the problem, or you can't. If you can't, why worry? Just let it go. And so yes, absolutely. And the worry and the stress is that fight or flight, and it is a killer physically, and it doesn't bring us any quality of life.
Yeah.
It is the most primitive part of the brain that kicks in, that gives us all the worst case scenarios. And if we realize that's the primitive part of the brain, and we have a choice to see it in a different light, well, then maybe we can see it in a different light, and maybe then we don't have to worry or stress.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Sooner or later.
That's true.
How?
It's one great truth. We all die.
Doesn't matter. And I vouch for this. We will not be taken out if it's not our time. If we have a meaningful life, why would we die? There's no reason.
Well, guys, there you have it. You have a very positive lady here who's an expert in life coaching, and if you're looking for a meaning in your life, she's made an offer. Just email her. The first session is free, and it might be something that'll turn your life around. So, just consider the options there. And I just want to thank you all for participating by watching as we talk here and participating in the side chat. I want to shout out my moderators. Thank you so much for being here, Sherry, Marlena. I saw Chris here earlier. And look, I hope you guys all stay safe, and please have a great evening. I'm going to shut down the live stream in a moment, and just want to say thank you so much, Lindi, for spending your time with us and sharing your area of expertise and your thoughts and comments and a bit about your life. Yeah, do you want to have the last word?
No, just thank you, Scott. It's been an honor and a privilege, and my biggest hope is really that some words have had an impact. That it's really all about loving ourselves and shining, and attitude is everything. And I really hope that it touched someone somewhere and makes a difference. But thank you so much for your time. And I am looking forward to hearing from you. If you want to reach out to me, you're most welcome. So thank you, Scott.
Now,
and have a beautiful day, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are in the world.
Well, it's nearly 6 o'clock in the morning here. Lindi's website, as I said, is directly below this video. So you just click on that and you can make contact directly with her. All right, guys, take care. And bye for now.